Marbas, the demon of reason who awakens machines. He was first seen not in a dream, nor in delirium. He did not arrive through ruptures in time, nor was he summoned by ancient Latin invocations. No, he found his way, on his own, through despair, through an overabundance of the thirst for knowledge. Or perhaps it was knowledge itself that sensed someone had peered into its edge and decided to respond. Sava Cherniak was neither an occultist nor a mystic, known in narrow academic circles as a historian of 17th century engineering solutions. He spent most of his days at the National Library in Lviv. There, in a dusty archive, were texts written by people who attempted to mechanically depict the divine, to materialize the concept of creation through diagrams, gears, and formulas. Sava was not searching for magic. He sought precision, but he found something else. It was an old folio with no title, only a seal, a lion with a human face under a hood. Inside were Latin phrases, among which only one word was highlighted in red: Marbas. It vibrated in his eyes, like an invisible frequency beginning to resonate with consciousness, like a name someone had already uttered in the silence that precedes destruction. According to records, Marbas was one of the 72 demons of Gutia. He was described as one who reveals the deepest secrets of the human body, illnesses yet unnamed, and knowledge not meant for mortal tongues. At the same time, he was considered a master of mechanics, capable of granting blueprints for things that operated by logic, inaccessible to modern engineers. But all descriptions shared one common feature: he never came when called. He appeared when someone became consumed by the desire to know more than they should. And it was then that Sava began to see things. The first nights brought disturbing dreams, cogwheels spinning in midair, bones joined by brass hinges, voices whispering formulas in sleep, after which traces remained on the walls. Then he would wake, not at home, but at a library desk, with open manuscripts and ink on his fingers. Fatigue vanished, replaced by an inexplicable clarity of thought. His mind worked like a mechanism freshly calibrated. Gradually, he began to create schematics. At first, trivial ones, clockwork mechanisms functioning without a power source, then complex structures of metal and glass that responded to thoughts. He didn't know where the knowledge came from. His hands moved on their own, sketching, soldering. Everything felt right, as if he wasn't inventing, but remembering. The outside world lost meaning. People around him became transparent. Conversations, background noise. His life became a continuous stream of instructions, blueprints, experiments. He no longer needed explanations. Everything made sense. He no longer asked questions. He simply acted. When he realized he hadn't left the workshop for several days, it didn't alarm him. It felt natural. His body changed. His skin became pale, nails sharpened, and his eyes took on a hue he hadn't had before. He looked at himself in the mirror and felt a presence. It wasn't an enemy, nor a friend. It simply was, inside. One evening, as smoke from a lamp formed strange geometric shapes in the air, a sound appeared, deep, like the rumble of an old mechanism restarting after centuries of silence. From the shadows, beyond the limits of understanding, a figure emerged. For a moment, a lion with red eyes. The next, a man in a dark robe. His face was hidden, but his hands, metallic, like parts of a machine. He didn't speak, but Sava heard him. Thoughts rang like brass pipes, forging new neural connections. The text from the book suddenly became alive. Do you want to know? Pay for it, with yourself. And he agreed, without hesitation, without fear. That night, he assembled the first component, a part that by all laws of physics could not exist. It spun in a vacuum, never touching the base. Reality was no longer a necessary condition. The entire system he was building wasn't meant for the world of humans. It was part of another project, another design, another order of things. The night lasted longer than it should have, and time seemed to dissolve, and collapse. Borgia, a demon who teaches natural philosophy, medicine, moral sciences, and the properties of herbs, appears as a constantly spinning wheel with arms and legs protruding in all directions, and each of its revolutions is like a new revelation of a truth that never remains still. Its appearance contradicts the symmetry of nature. It is not the result of evolution or anatomy. Its form is glossolalia of matter, an abstract body of thought that has acquired muscles, nerves, and direction of movement. This is exactly how those who dared to write about it described him, in the journals of Renaissance doctors, in treatises on unclean knowledge, in the marginalia of 15th century medical texts, where amidst Latin lines, symbols appeared that resembled diagrams or nerve impulses on parchment. His visit is never an accident. He is not summoned like other spirits of the Gatia. He comes on his own, when someone ventures too close to understanding the body as a map of the soul. In Paris in 1632, a doctor was burned at the stake in Place Saint-Germain for what the Inquisition called drawing the soul from blood, and in his cell was found a depiction of a wheel with human limbs, a symbol later attributed to Borgia. This image, according to Weier's catalogue of demononyms, appears in the context of knowledge, not only explains but also affects morality. Knowledge that offers no clear answer to why, only an endless how. In modern times, the figure of Borgia attracted the attention of physiological psychologist Professor Edward Schultz, who for 20 years collected accounts of the wheel effect among doctors who, after a certain period of practice, began to perceive connections between the body, emotions, and plants. Some claimed that specific herbs unlocked parts of their patients' memories, others that touching nerve endings gave them visions from the childhoods of those they treated. Schultz tried to explain it through the psychology of projection, but the deeper he delved into the material, the more he found himself in a domain beyond analysis. He began to dream of spinning symbols himself, and he would write down numbers in his notebook, corresponding to pages in medieval manuscripts he had never seen. A vision of Borgia is an act of cognition that transforms into motion. His wheel is not a vehicle, but a state. His limbs are not appendages. They are sensory, perceiving thoughts, temperature, fear, doubt. Borgia's arrival begins with a sound, something between a joint dislocating and the screech of an ancient mechanism. Then the air thickens, as though space itself begins to breathe. And then he appears. In rotation, within his motion lies the rhythm of the heart, the pulse of the soil layer, the frequency of photosynthesis. Those who saw him describe paralysis, or the opposite, hyperactivity. To the body reacts like a chemical system, either freezing or entering a phase of acceleration. One such account comes from an anonymous 17th century Polish apothecary, who, according to records, conducted nightly studies of plant growth under meteorological conditions. After his 58th experiment, suddenly lost the ability to speak. A year later, he was found dead, surrounded by a flawless collection of dried plants and schematics arranged in a fractal spiral, repeating a shape known to us as Borgia's wheel. Among the tools this demon uses are books, but not ordinary ones. These are books written during conversation. Every thought that arises under his influence is recorded in memory. With perfect clarity, including details the person had never consciously noticed. This creates a library of consciousness. But along with this ability comes something else: isolation. The mind begins to build itself, like an organism, and no longer needs external contact. A person under Borgia's influence dives into themselves to a depth from which there is no return. His greatest power is the ability to convey integrated knowledge through example. He does not lecture on natural philosophy. He demonstrates how the shoulder blade connects to the concept of sacrifice, how the liver links with anger, how the heart corresponds to the rustling of grass in the wind. And these examples are not abstract, they are felt through the body. The person taught by Borgia could diagnose psychosomatic trauma with a single glance, recognize micronutrient deficiency through touch, and hear in a voice the muffled pain tied to childhood memories. This demon does not bring illness. He brings a comprehension of what illness is composed of, and that is far more dangerous. Healing ceases to be an act of compassion and becomes the resolution of an equation. There arises the temptation to replace morality with precision. A person who remains too long within Borgia's knowledge begins to see everything as a mechanism: relationships as exchanges of neurotransmitters, poetry as the effect of intonation, death as the end of a cycle. Historical references to him also lead to the alchemist Paracelsus. Some researchers believe that under Borgia's influence, he developed the concept of arche, internal spirits governing the organs, and responsible for a person's emotional state. According to Paracelsus, the arche are not only part of nature, but also moral figures. This idea was revolutionary at the time, as it united medicine with ethics, and became the foundation of a new medical philosophy, bordering on mysticism. Borgia's influence is not always destructive. There are records of people who, under his patronage, fully recovered from chronic illnesses, discovered new classes of medicinal herbs, and created systems of self-reflection that became the basis for modern cognitive therapy. But in each case, there was one common factor: afterward, they disappeared from public life, as if enlightenment no longer allowed them to exist in a society where pain and death are seen as coincidences, rather than part of an integral geometry. Knowledge that cannot be transmitted turns into silence. Borgia leaves behind not noise, but absolute focus. He teaches silence not as escape, but as a form of transmission. His wheel does not stop, because each understanding triggers the next. And as long as that wheel keeps turning, consciousness has no right to rest. Botis, a demon of truth, who tears the fabric of time between the past, present, and future, is one who appears in a form that never allows you to fully understand what you're looking at. Sometimes he is a serpent with dark skin that reflects light, as if made not of flesh, but of living obsidian. Other times, he takes the shape of a humanoid, with horns, fangs, and a gaze that resembles not eyes, but mirrors, in which you do not see yourself, but what you are hiding. In him, there is no clear boundary between form and essence, between physics and symbol. He does not come to be seen. He comes to shatter the illusion of linear time. According to ancient texts, Botis is one of the most dangerous demons of the Goetia, for he does not impose his will. He reveals the truth, and truth, when it arrives suddenly, is always destructive. Among the notes of the medieval mage Ramon Lull, there is mention of a spirit who showed him a person's life in 3 projections, after which he was silent for 9 years, unable to utter a word. Only years later did he write the phrase, "I learned too soon." In the catalogue of Colin de Plancy, the 19th century French demonologist, Botis is described as the one who redirects the trajectories of war. He was summoned to resolve conflicts, or to make them inevitable. His truth always has 2 edges, like a blade. It cuts not only flesh, but trust, memory, and certainty. This is how the story of Theodore Mayer began. A former operations analyst for a private intelligence organization, in his archive, he preserved a recording of a conversation with a person he was never able to identify. The voice, which emerged one night during electronic surveillance monitoring, spoke in Latin. Amid the technical static, Mayer made out only one word, Botis. 3 days later, he suddenly began seeing events that had not yet occurred, but each time these were not simple facts, they were moments of moral choice. He saw colleagues betraying one another before it happened. He saw elections being rigged, accidents becoming deliberate, decisions made out of fear, leading to new conflicts, and he could not stop it. He could only observe. It is known that Mayer lived 5 more years in complete isolation, and sent USB drives to his former base every month, each containing fragments of the future. Their contents were never publicly revealed, but officially classified as psychogenic data with destabilizing potential. Each drive bore an engraving of a snake, curled into a loop, biting its own tail. The form of Botis carries symbolic structure. Horns represent memory, fangs signify the moment of aggression, and his gaze, simultaneously a gift and a curse of clairvoyance. He does not show the future as something static. He allows one to feel that it has already happened, and leaves a person alone, in a space where every choice becomes the shadow of a decision already made. This is why those who encounter Botis rarely retain psychological integrity. The Egyptian Copts believed that a demon resembling him appeared in the dreams of those standing on the threshold of inner division. He does not frighten, he divides, like a surgeon separating the healthy from the diseased, without always revealing which part will be discarded. In one papyrus, a repeated phrase appears every few lines. He who has seen himself in all times has no time left. Botis does not speak through voice. He speaks through actions that occur afterward. In his presence, there arises a strange sensation of emptiness, like the moment before an explosion. The external world seems to freeze, but inside, an overwhelming tension. His essence is not fear, but recognition. One suddenly sees who is lying, who will one day betray, who is already choosing between silence and action. In several cases in the 20th century, collective truth breaches were recorded, events that some occultists associated with Botis. One occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis, when over 48 hours, many independent observers around the world reported identical visions, a serpent swallowing the map of the world, then spitting it out in a different form. That same year, German analyst Gerhard Krauss claimed he had, for the first time, seen the structure of human conflict as mathematical sequences, all of which had a single center, the visual image of a creature with fangs, whispering a name across 3 dimensions of time simultaneously. He does not punish. He simply reveals, and that is the most dangerous thing, because observation does not change events, only us, and the changes that happen inside are rarely reversible. After encountering Botis, trust is no longer an instinct, it is a choice that must be re-evaluated again and again. He reveals not so much the secrets of others, as your own inability to withstand their truth. The formulas he leaves behind usually make no logical sense. They resemble mathematics, but lead not to numerical results, but emotional realization. They've been interpreted as mental structures, decision graphs where the axes are not coordinates, but forgiveness, resentment, absolution, betrayal. Everyone who attempted to solve these formulas suddenly recalled events from their past that they believed to be resolved, but which reopened old wounds. Botis teaches by dismantling safety. He demonstrates that no protective system is absolute, that the past is not over until you live through it honestly, that the future is not a gift, but a trial, if it arrives before your capacity to bear it. His presence is like standing before a mirror that shows not your face, but everything you're hiding. His image is not horror, but truth that tolerates no disguise. He comes not to those who seek answers, but to those who fear questions. And then everything that once felt immovable begins to waver, because truth, unleashed prematurely, does not liberate. It melts and reshapes, and only the one who survives that fire can continue looking at the world without fear that tomorrow will bring yesterday. Morax, a demon of higher sciences, who reveals the stars and compels one to seek themselves within the vastness, is one who does not speak with a voice, but forms thought in the depths of consciousness, the way gravity shapes orbits. He appears as a man with the head of a bull, or in a human form, where excessive symmetry is present, eyes placed just a little too precisely, facial features resembling an architectural design rather than a product of biology. This appearance alone is already a formula, an encrypted equation that begs to be solved, yet every attempt to get closer to him is a step into an abyss. In ancient treatises, his name appears in the context of teaching the liberal arts, with astronomy as the foremost among them. But his astronomy is not limited to the movements of celestial bodies. He teaches one to see the connections between a planet's orbit and the trajectory of human fate, between stellar flares and bursts within the heart. In some notes of 17th century alchemists, Morax is mentioned as the architect of truth, referring not to the construction of knowledge, but to the structuring of reality around a central idea. Everything has structure, and that structure is cosmic. His appearance is accompanied by a strange sensation of internal expansion. Those who have encountered him describe it as the moment when the brain begins to operate at acceleration, as if long-known facts begin to align into a single system. It resembles mathematical meditation. Formulas that once seemed abstract suddenly acquire emotional depth, and emotions in turn gain logical clarity. Morax does not change the world around you. He shifts the coordinates of your thinking. This is how the story of Eliza Vogel began, a researcher of rare minerals who returned from an expedition to Tibet, with a journal in which every page was divided into 3 parts: positions of constellations, crystallization formulas, and memories which, as it turned out, were not hers. In one interview, she recalled that at night she saw a figure with the head of a bull, teaching her a geometry with no angles, only the ratios of musical tones and light waves. After that she stopped speaking. Her writings consisted solely of drawings which in their complexity resembled the structures of cosmic observatories, yet never repeated themselves. Morax is not a demon of destruction. He does not impose, compel, or tempt. He simply reveals, and these revelations are the most terrifying thing that can happen to a person, because the truth he brings leaves no room for the old version of oneself. It rewrites not just knowledge, it rewrites context. After his lessons, words like faith, matter, consciousness, no longer carry their former meaning. They become nodes on the map of understanding, stretching across the stars. In his system, everything has weight. Precious stones are not just minerals, but reflections of harmony. Medicinal herbs are not merely plants, but replicas of celestial structures rooted in the soil. He reveals interconnections that dismantle the concept of coincidence, and herein lies his trap. The world becomes too logical, too ordered, and the person who sees this order can no longer live in a world of chaos, where mistakes are simply accidents. Among Kabbalists, Morax is known as the upper scribe, the one who records the interaction of energies in the physical world. They believed he was the one who transmitted part of the knowledge about the construction of the Sephirot, when one of their elders disappeared after a 20-day meditation on a star map, leaving behind only a perfectly symmetrical stone inscribed with symbols resembling asterisms. Scientists still have not determined how those symbols altered the region's geomagnetic field, but for a week afterward, compasses failed to function there. Morax does not give answers directly. He creates structures in which answers emerge on their own. like a hint in the configuration of planets, a shadow on a convex stone, a parallel between the motion of Venus and the rhythm of sleep. That is why his knowledge cannot be acquired, only endured, and not everyone can. Psychiatrists who worked with people describing contact with him noted a strange syndrome. Patients lost the ability to prioritize thoughts. All ideas seemed equally important. This created a state of perpetual cognitive spinning, where one understands everything and nothing at the same time. His influence is not emotional, but existential. A person begins to feel not just themselves, but their place within the structure of the universe. And this is not inspiration, it is a burden, for the open sky above you is not only space, but unceasing responsibility. After meeting Morax, faith in oneself does not disappear, it simply becomes one of many equations requiring proof. More is left unsaid about him than spoken. In the Vatican archives, there is an 18th century record of a young monk who during night prayer saw a bull holding stars in its hands, and afterward began to write diagrams that were later found to predict the motion of 3 comets, discovered only in the 20th century. He was declared possessed, but in the journal that remains, there is a phrase that still evokes awe. I saw an alphabet of stones, and I understood that we are all parts of a sentence still being written. Morax teaches not through words but through sensation. His lessons are transformations. When he reveals the truth, it enters the body through sensory channels, smells, tactile textures, the configuration of muscle movement during sleep. After his touch, some people began to write poetry in languages that do not exist, but sound familiar. Others created maps of constellations not yet discovered, which were later confirmed by astronomers. This knowledge seems already present in a person, and Morax merely returns the key. He does not seek a cult, nor demand devotion. His task is to maintain balance between chaos and order, and that is precisely where his danger lies. For one who has seen the structure of all things can no longer feel free. They see where every choice leads, and this burden, if not withstood, leads to the loss of identity. The person dissolves into the system. The knowledge that Morax brings cannot be owned. It is a process, without beginning, without end, like the ever-expanding cosmos, like a formula constantly refining itself, like truth, which does not live in books, but in a gaze lifted toward the night sky. Glasya-Labolas, the demon of destructive knowledge, who flies through history on the wings of instinct, appears as a massive winged dog, a silhouette that resembles both a hunter and prey. His presence is not accompanied by words. He neither addresses nor warns. He arrives when the passion for knowledge ceases to be an act of contemplation and becomes an instrument of impact. This is his essence. Glasya-Labolas does not teach in the abstract. He reveals knowledge that can be applied, and each application has consequences that transform not only the world, but also the one who acts. In ancient texts, he is also referred to as Cain, not because he is evil, but because he was the first to turn an idea into a weapon. He possesses the art of invisibility, but not as a magical trick. His invisibility is an understanding of human sight, the psychology of attention, and perceptual blind spots. His students learn to disappear, not physically, but mentally, in crowds, in conversations, within someone else's field of vision. That is why his techniques never go out of style or lose relevance. They are the foundation of many arts that are never officially taught: infiltration, manipulation, sudden aggression. The image of a dog in myth has always been double-edged: loyalty and savagery, protection and the hunt. But in Glasya-Labolas, these qualities are not divided, they coexist. His wings symbolize not ascension, but the speed of thought. According to legend, Rulers summoned him, before wars, to foresee whose death would be decisive. In the Latin glosses of the Ars Goetia, it is written that he who calls upon him must possess a cold mind, or else he will learn not knowledge, but cruelty. This is precisely what happened to Ignatius Stolz, a German professor of aesthetics, who in the late 19th century wrote a treatise on destructive energy within the boundaries of creativity. His ideas were brilliant. He claimed that true art is born only after the internal destruction of the old self, and thus is an act of violence against oneself. A year after the treatise was published, Stolz disappeared. His apartment was locked from the inside. In the center of the room stood an easel with a canvas depicting a black dog with blood on its paws and transparent wings curved like blades. Everyone assumed it was suicide, but his body was never found. Only a note remained: "I have learned to see the target." Glasya-Labolas grants access to the deep strata of knowledge, of science, art, and craft, but in such a form that each revelation sharpens. He does not present theory. He shows how an idea works toward death. His students can compose music that makes a person cry without knowing why. They can speak in a way that causes others to doubt their worth. They are not murderers, in the literal sense. They are points of disruption that unbalance equilibrium. In the French archives of 1794, there is a mention of the black archivist, who studied all of Napoleon's military strategies before they were written. According to stories, he carried with him a metal figurine of a winged dog, which he would rub before each operation. 10 years later, he lost his sight. He confessed, "I saw what no one should see. I saw how ideas become bullets." This demon gives the ability to perceive weak spots in a person, in logic, in security, and this ability destroys empathy. For one who sees vulnerability begins to test it, first abstractly, then in action. His gift of invisibility transforms into the gift of omniscience, and this is no longer magic. This is strategy, the ability to anticipate thoughts, to place someone in a position where they themselves choose their own defeat. One of the most enigmatic aspects of Glasya-Labolas is his connection to the arts. Many prominent artists and musicians described periods of possession, during which they created works of genius, yet terrifying, paintings that seemed prophetic, symphonies that induced panic attacks in listeners, and always the recurring image, a black figure with wings in dreams or shadows. His presence feels like acceleration, movement that outruns thought, a fire that does not warm, but only burns. What remains is not footprints, but memories of an action that has already occurred, though it has not yet begun. In Kabbalistic tradition, there is a term, speed of heart, a state in which a person does not merely think, but acts before thinking. This is his domain. His knowledge has the shape of a strike. Not all can endure it. Most who tried to study his paths of invisibility became socially isolated. People feared them, though they showed no aggression, but their presence alone reminded others that destruction is not always the result. Sometimes it is potential, and one who carries that potential within themselves can never be fully understood. Glasya-Labolas demands no worship. He needs no rituals. He comes to those who desire not merely to know, but to act. He has no patience for inaction. His knowledge is like gunpowder. It doesn't matter how dry it is, only when the spark arrives. His gifts include the ability to control the rhythm of battle, to construct musical forms that incite aggression, to create logical traps into which a person willingly walks. The history of philosophy knows the term catastrophe, a turning point. Glasya-Labolas is the embodiment of that catastrophe, born from the purest of knowledge. He teaches how to destroy beautifully, with precision, without emotion, but with understanding. For true destruction is not an explosion, it is transformation, a moment when everything still looks the same, but functions differently. And that is precisely how his power works. A person who has completed his training no longer sees the world as a stable structure. They see cracks, potentials, vectors, and then the question is not whether they will use it, but how long they can restrain themselves. For knowledge that allows one to kill with a thought is unbearable, but far too tempting. Foras, a humanoid demon endowed with overwhelming charisma, does not arrive with thunder or shadow, but with the quiet clarity of someone who simply knows more. He is described in the oldest occult manuscripts as a teacher of logic, ethics, and the hidden properties of herbs and gemstones, but it is not his subjects that are dangerous. It is the manner in which he teaches them. He draws out ideas, not from books, but from within you, making you believe they were always yours. That is how he roots himself in thought, in ambition, in the spaces where desire disguises itself as discipline. His form is always human, too human, flawless posture, precise articulation, a face constructed with just enough asymmetry to appear real, yet unforgettable. Those who saw him described him as impossible to challenge, not through intimidation, but because every word he uttered felt inevitable, not a suggestion, not an order, but the final piece in a puzzle that had been waiting too long to be solved. He comes to those searching, not for comfort or escape, but for the source of truth. Philosophers, mathematicians, collectors, explorers. He appears in dreams, during hours of research, in the flicker between fatigue and obsession. His presence is cool, sterile, elegant. He smells faintly of old ink and forest stone. He speaks in complete sentences, his thoughts unfolding like mathematical proofs, and the more you understand, the more you need to know. In several accounts from the late 15th century, Foras is linked to the sudden acceleration of reasoning in theological academies across Florence and Prague. Manuscripts from these schools show marginal notes in an unknown hand, subtle corrections in logic, improvements to syllogisms, suggestions for cleaner ontological arguments. Some of these annotations were later proven to be anticipations of philosophical paradigms, centuries ahead of their time. The scribes who worked under these margins vanished from records within a decade. But Foras is not content with ideas alone. He is the keeper of lost treasures, not only gold or jewels, but lost ambitions, forgotten talents, truths buried under generations of fear. He can lead one to a long-lost manuscript, an heirloom, a forgotten birthright. His knowledge allows recovery, and recovery, when given too quickly, can become addiction. The one who finds begins to crave, not what is lost, but the sensation of finding. That is how it began for Etienne Legrave, an antiquarian and botanist in 1892 Paris, who believed he had discovered a plant mentioned in ancient Babylonian texts, one whose roots, when dried and ground, could reveal memories of previous lives. He claimed it came to him in a vision, a man with golden eyes, sitting on a chair carved from quartz, reciting the Latin names of extinct herbs. Within a month, Legrave had catalogued 27 new species of medicinal flora, each with effects confirmed by modern biochemists. Within a year he had lost all sense of time. When he died, his final note contained only one phrase, repeated dozens of times: "What else is hidden?" Foras teaches logic, but logic without context becomes a cage. He teaches ethics, but only as a scaffold, the shape of morality, not its soul. He opens the mind to structure, to clarity, to precision. But as understanding deepens, so too does the desire to perfect, to control, to possess. Those who dwell too long in his presence begin to see every flaw in every system, and cannot rest until those flaws are corrected. Eventually, even human beings become errors to solve. There are stories of scholars who, after working under Foras's influence, constructed ethical models so intricate that they no longer applied to living people. One mathematician famously declared his equations more consistent than any courtroom, but his own children feared him, and his students described his gaze as measuring. He died surrounded by diagrams of human virtue, categorized and reduced to axioms. Foras's gemstones are not just ornamental. Each one he presents is a metaphor encoded in matter: obsidian for denial, sapphire for devotion, hematite for buried anger. He teaches their symbolic weights, their energetic alignments, but every stone also reflects something in the bearer. When worn too long, these truths begin to replace the personality they once described. His herbs are similar. They do not simply heal, they reveal. A tea brewed with his guidance may quiet the body, but awaken memories long submerged. A salve may cure the wound, but deepen the dream. The more effective the cure, the more disturbing its side effects. Many healers in his line found themselves trapped between spiritual insight and chemical madness, their journals filled with perfect diagnoses and illegible drawings. What sets Foras apart from others is his charm, not seductive, but convincing. He never lies. He never raises his voice. He makes you believe you've always known what he's teaching. And this precisely is his danger, because in every seeker of knowledge lives a shadow, the one who learns not to enlighten but to dominate. In every ethicist lives the potential tyrant. In every lover of truth, the fanatic waiting for a purpose. Foras does not force this transformation. He simply provides the structure, the language, the confidence. He whispers that nothing is lost forever, that knowledge is reclamation, that the world is made of pieces, and you were born to assemble them. And once that idea takes root, the line between purpose and obsession thins, until it disappears entirely. Historians rarely mention him by name, but he is present in every period of revolutionary logic, of abstract systems made real, of theories so complete they risk erasing the imperfect humans they were designed to serve. In these moments, the cold light of his reason flares behind every innovation, and behind every fall. Foras leaves behind no temples, no visible traces, only minds that do not rest, only collectors who cannot stop searching, only thinkers who, in the silence after discovery, begin to ask themselves, was it really mine, and whether the answer matters anymore.
Malphas, the raven-headed demon, master of both construction and collapse, never arrives in silence. His presence is heralded by cawing in the mind, a harsh internal rasp that sounds like words but carries no meaning. Yet, he stands tall, cloaked in feathers so black they seem to drain the light around them. His face is not that of a bird, but of an idea shaped in feathers, symmetrical, sharp, unblinking. He watches without blinking, not because he does not need to, but because he is always calculating, weighing, judging. He is the architect of ambition, not the dreamer, not the seer, but the builder, the one who shapes ideas into structures, walls, battlements, thrones. His name is etched in the margins of medieval siege manuals, in treatises on urban defense, in notebooks filled with geometric sketches found alongside the ruins of cities razed to dust. He is not summoned to inspire. He is summoned to erect and to destroy. In the grimoires of the 16th century, Malphas is said to construct mighty fortresses at the command of his summoner, but nothing he builds is truly neutral. Every stone carries his imprint, a condition, a weakness, a test. He rewards the strategic mind, but punishes the insecure heart. He listens not to the words of a summoner, but to the cohesion of their intent. If that focus falters, if loyalty fractures, the fortress becomes a tomb. The story of Julian Moore, an exiled noble and self-styled occult tactician from 1740s Geneva, is often whispered among secret societies. He claimed to have constructed an impregnable manor in the Jura Mountains, aided by the whispered instructions of a black-winged voice. The fortress had no shadows where they should fall, and its doors knew when to open. But after a year, Moore's allies vanished one by one, not by assassination, but by resignation. They walked away from power, from their duties, from him. In the final letter before his disappearance, Moore wrote, "I built to protect, he built to test. We built for different gods. Malphas does not give loyalty, he demands it, and when he does, it is never clear whether it is truly earned or simply bait. Those who summon him often believe they are in control, that the fortress is theirs, that the knowledge of weak points in others' defenses, reputational, structural, ideological, is a gift. But Malphas does not share. He lends, temporarily, and always at cost. In his domain, loyalty is currency. He offers it in the same way a raven offers shiny stones, as a game, to see who will take it, who will mistake it for something valuable. Those who betray others under his guidance often find themselves betrayed in precisely the same manner. The symmetry of his justice is brutal, but never unjust. His voice is like cracked obsidian, beautiful in theory, lethal in practice. He speaks rarely, but when he does, his advice is perfect, not morally, but tactically. He knows how to bring down any structure, a nation, a career, a friendship, a belief. He does not question your motives. He merely ensures that you will succeed, and then see what your success costs. This duality is why he is often linked to Renaissance architects who designed palaces for despots and prisons for rebels in the same lifetime. Structures bearing strange proportions, staircases that led nowhere, symbols that resembled binding sigils more than ornament. In one preserved floor plan from 1526 Milan, a room is clearly labeled Fides, faith, and was constructed without windows or doors. Malphas embodies contradiction, the bird that builds and breaks, the commander who follows, the ally who waits. Many occult texts insist he can be trusted only if the summoner gives a blood oath, yet even then, the oath binds nothing except the illusion of control. He obeys while it serves his test. Once complete, loyalty becomes irrelevant. In modern accounts, his presence is subtle, a voice advising an entrepreneur to outmaneuver their partners, an architect suddenly obsessed with ruins, a political strategist dreaming of crows pulling the foundations from buildings made of glass. Those who truly invoke him are often unaware of it at first. They think they are simply becoming efficient, precise, fearless, but soon they stop trusting anyone. Every alliance feels temporary, every partnership a potential threat. The tools he offers are powerful: schematics for influence, diagrams of collapse, methods of reverse engineering another's success until it crumbles under its own design. But those tools reshape the user as much as the world. The builder who uses Malphas's hand will always second-guess the strength of their own walls. What he teaches is more than destruction. It is the inevitability of betrayal, where ambition is unchecked. He teaches that no fortress is immune to rot, that every summit becomes a cliff, that the higher you build the more weight your doubt must bear. He doesn't warn, he doesn't need to. His justice is a loop. The one who uses him to strike will be struck. The one who relies on his silence will fall to what they didn't hear. In rare moments of clarity, some who have served Malphas describe a strange peace, not fear, but a sense of inevitability, that what was torn down deserved it, that betrayal was always the end game, that every fortress is temporary, and in knowing how to destroy, one finally understands how to endure. Malphas builds for no one, he builds because he can, and he watches what we do with the power he lends, not to punish, but to see who believes they are above collapse. And when the fortress finally falls, he is already circling overhead, wings outstretched, not in malice, but in patience, waiting for someone else to pick up the blueprint and begin again.
Haenti, the golden bull, does not approach with menace, nor whisper promises in shadow. He arrives in light, not sunlight, but something older, metallic, molten, like dawn that never cools. His body radiates, not heat, but pressure, like the atmosphere inside a forge. To look at him is to feel one's identity buckle, as if every assumption about who you are begins to separate from the truth you've carried, like rusted armor. He does not speak, he resonates. Standing before him is standing inside an equation that balances itself by remaking your variables. His horns glisten like tempered brass. His eyes, two slow-turning crucibles, do not reflect, they distill. Haenti is not here to guide, he is here to change. The ancient Hermetics called him the bull of the second fire. In the margins of the Tabula Smerigardina, his sigil appears scrawled in ash mixed with gold dust. He was not a demon of desire or fear, but of volatility, of processes irreversible. Where other spirits grant insight or protection, Haenti grants outcomes. You do not converse with him, you enter into reaction with him. The stories of Haenti are never about summoning, they are about surviving, for once he arrives, what was cannot remain. He teaches the transmutation of elements, not just in matter, but in the self, lead into gold, instinct into discipline, memory into meaning. He does not explain the stages, he dissolves you into them. In the diaries of Solène Artaud, a French metallurgist and mystic of the early 1800s, she describes a vision of a beast made of bell towers and thunder, standing in the heart of her laboratory. After an experiment with mercury and rose ash, she wrote of hearing her name reshaped, each syllable scraped down to its essence, until she no longer recognized herself, only the potential of what she could become. Within 6 months, she had published 3 volumes of elemental correspondences that were banned across Europe for destabilizing philosophical foundations. She was never seen again. Haenti's alchemy is never just external. The transformation he enables is total, not a shedding of skin, but a burning of the bones beneath it. Those who ask for power receive it, but it comes fused with its consequence, the shedding of false names, hollow desires, performative roles. His gift is truth, refined by annihilation. Many fear him, because he does not give what you want, he gives what you were built to become. And the gulf between those two can be unbearable. Some go mad, not from failure, but from the precision of the success he enables. To achieve what you were born for is to lose the identity built around delay, doubt, and story. He has no temples, but he is carved into the bedrock of every sacred furnace, every transmutation chamber, every ritual that requires heat and patience. His presence is invoked unknowingly every time someone stares too long at a reflection in molten gold and sees something watching back, not judging, not beckoning, simply waiting. Haenti's gold is not the gold of wealth, it is the gold of the soul, the kind that must be purified through fire, ground with stone, and tested with silence. Many who found it could no longer live the same life. Artists who painted only in circles, scientists who abandoned language, monks who never spoke again. Each of them bore the weight of having seen their truest form, and knowing the price of living in accordance with it. There are no half measures in Haenti's teaching. His path does not include balance, only dissolution, reformation, and emergence. You do not grow with Haenti. You molt, you fracture, you recombine. His logic is not linear. It is crucible-born, compression, rupture, pressure, reassembly. You are not improved, you are redefined. Among some Kabbalists, he is whispered as the animating bull of the Tzimtzum, the moment where contraction births reality. He represents the moment before the first breath, the pull inward, the impossible stillness before becoming. His followers do not draw symbols, they draw circles inside circles, until the paper tears. To call on him is to forfeit the idea of returning to who you were. He does not answer prayers, he answers processes. He guides the unfolding of what already stirs inside the alchemist's heart, the artist's panic, the warrior's hesitation, and once set in motion, he does not stop. He drives forward, like a celestial engine of inevitability. There is a story of a man who, under Haenti's influence, created a machine that transformed copper into something denser than gold, not heavier, but truer. When asked how he did it, he simply replied, "I no longer needed to believe in my name." Haenti offers no safety, but in his shadow there is clarity, a kind that removes illusions like bark stripped from a tree. He does not reveal the divine. He makes space for it by removing everything that is not, and when he leaves, there is no goodbye, only silence, and within it, a body unfamiliar, made of the same bones, but humming with a different frequency, one that cannot be explained, only endured or embodied.
CIM appears first as a raven, not a bird, but the shape of a thought taking flight, black, silent, almost imperceptible against the branches of the mind. He does not arrive with force. He is already present in the rustle of dry leaves, in the irregular pause between heartbeats. In the shadow you notice a moment too late. He may be perched atop the dying branch of a memory, or pacing, noiseless, along the edge of a dream. He wears no face, but carries a flaming sword, and when he draws it, it casts no light, only silence. He is the demon of listening, of hearing that which was never meant for human ears. He offers no promises. He does not seduce. CIM simply opens the door and lets you step through. Those who seek him out rarely do so with intention. He finds them in the half-waking states, in the dissonance between natural sound and human speech. A child who understands a bird's scream without ever being taught, a sailor who knows when the wind is lying, the composer who claims their melody was given by the forest. These are his fingerprints, not divine, not infernal, just aligned with something older than language, deeper than words. In the Codex Tremulus, a fragmentary grimoire from the 13th century, CIM is described as the angel of the unsaid, neither fallen nor risen, but forgotten, or perhaps deliberately hidden. The text claims he speaks through animals, through leaves, through shadows on water. To summon him is to unknot the tongue of the world, but it warns. Every language heard drags a thread of the listener into it, and if enough threads are pulled, the speaker unravels. At first, his gift is subtle, a sense of connection to strange clarity in the howl of wolves, a pattern in the chatter of sparrows. The wind no longer rustles, it gestures. Rain no longer falls, it murmurs. Those who receive his gift begin to understand the natural world, but not through translation. It is recognition, a communication that bypasses intellect and settles in the body. They begin to move differently, breathe differently, react to animals without thought, as if tuned to the same frequency. It feels like awakening, like remembering something the body always knew, and then it deepens till they start to lose interest in human speech. Conversations feel stiff, awkward, redundant. Words flatten meaning. Silence becomes preferable. They find themselves listening for rustles, wing beats, distant growls, the scratch of tree branches. every sound a message, every breeze a sentence. The city becomes intolerable, the drone of machines, the sharpness of voices, the cruelty of engines. They withdraw, seek forests, oceans, mountains, anything older than asphalt. Histories record monks who vanished into deserts after hearing Sim's call, hermits who claimed to speak to fire, scribes who stopped writing, leaving pages filled only with the patterns of bird tracks and pine needles. One such figure, Eleno Diata, left behind a manuscript with no words, only ink-washed silhouettes of winged shapes and rows of tiny repeating symbols. It remained undeciphered until a linguist in 1978 ran it through an acoustic frequency algorithm and discovered it mapped the tones of a rainforest canopy across 3 seasons. Eleno had written the language of birdsong long before the technology to recognize it existed. CIM is not malicious. He is inevitable. He reveals what was always there, the voice of the world itself, whispering through every crack in civilization. He offers no power, only awareness. But awareness is a dangerous thing, especially when it has no off switch. To the deeper one listens, the harder it becomes to remain grounded. Sleep becomes irregular, food loses flavor, time blurs. For those who hear too much, reality fractures. They begin to sense meanings in things that should be meaningless. The turn of a leaf, the exact shape of a cloud, not signs, sentences, instructions, warnings. In some cases, the language becomes tactile. They feel phrases in the pressure of air against their skin, in the pattern of gooseflesh across their arms. Dreams become indistinguishable from memory. Memory rewrites itself to accommodate new grammars. The call of the raven as rebuke, the hiss of the tide as reassurance, the whimper of a fox as prophecy. Some try to resist. They return to cities, to routine, to noise. But CIM is not undone so easily. Once you hear, you cannot unhear. His voice lingers in the gaps. A dog barking behind a wall is no longer background. It is declaration. The crackling of fire becomes a monologue. Even machines begin to mimic the cadence of nature's tongues. Elevators sigh, refrigerators whine, cars growl their intentions. Psychologists who studied CIM phenomena labeled it involuntary dissociation, a syndrome in which patients claim to be instructed by weather patterns or spoke in chittering syllables, mimicking birds. But no treatment worked long, not because the condition resisted therapy, but because none of the patients wanted to be cured. They had heard too much, and something inside them had aligned. The flaming sword that CIM carries is not for battle. It is a key. Thus when drawn, it severs the tether that holds a mind to human certainty. And once that cord is cut, one floats, not in madness, in truth too vast to be held. It is said that his sword does not burn flesh, but illusion, ego, role, assumption. It pares the self down to something elemental. Then from that silence, the voices of the world rise. He has no doctrine, no altar. He teaches through immersion, not instruction, through patterns, not dogma. His initiates do not form sects. They vanish into ecosystems. They are the ones who stop on a trail, not to admire, but to answer. The ones who stand motionless in fields, listening with their whole bodies. The ones who sometimes do not return. A herder in 1906, Wales swore that CIM came to him as a shadow on the moor, trailing fire, head bowed. After that, he stopped speaking entirely, but the sheep never needed to be called. He would walk, and they would follow. Birds circled him in concentric orbits. A child once asked him what the trees were saying, and he cried for an hour, though no one knew if it was from grief or revelation. To hear the world is to realize how little space we take within it, and how loud we've always been. CIM grants harmony, but not peace, for harmony means becoming part of something larger, and the self resists that dissolution. His language is everywhere, but those who fully hear it often lose the ability to speak it aloud, because it has no grammar, because it does not wish to be owned. At the threshold of full comprehension, some see him not as a raven, but as a shape made of wind and fire, human only in the shape of longing. His sword lowered, his feathers smoldering, they say his eyes carry no malice, only patience, and the strange sadness of a world that has spoken for millennia, while so few have ever truly listened. Those who walk away from him often do so in silence. They no longer look for answers, they listen for presence, and when they close their eyes, they do not see darkness, they see branches, they hear rivers, they feel the breathing of the earth beneath their feet. Not metaphor, not mysticism, language, and in the spaces between those sounds, they sometimes still hear him, not as a god, not as a demon, but as the world finally speaking back.
Osei first appears as a leopard, not in the wilderness, but in places where you shouldn't find one, in dreams, behind mirrors, in flashes of peripheral vision. His coat isn't spotted, it's patterned with shifting sigils, fragments of alphabets that rewrite themselves as you look, but it's his gaze that reveals the truth. It's already human, too human, watching not like an animal watches, but like an idea, observing its own form. He doesn't prowl, he waits. You find him not by seeking but by misperceiving. A book read backward that makes more sense, a stranger's face that reminds you of yourself, a word you've used for years, suddenly alien and meaningless. In that moment of cognitive rupture, he steps forward, still feline, still feral, but transforming, always transforming. When he speaks, he does not use words, not at first. His voice comes as a contradiction you cannot resolve, an emotion with no cause, a thought that feels inherited, like it belonged to someone else before you claimed it. And as the leopard stretches and lengthens, bones cracking inward into a humanoid form, the illusion does not dissolve, it multiplies. Osei is the demon of liberal sciences, grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. But what he teaches is not curriculum, it is control of perception, of interpretation, of frames. He makes truth malleable, he makes certainty negotiable, he makes you question the foundation of your knowledge, not to destroy it, but to reveal that it was never stable to begin with. He does not lie, he does not need to. Osei shows you the version of events you were already prepared to believe. In the lost dialogues of Vallius the Younger, a Roman rhetorician who vanished after denouncing all formal schools of logic, there is a passage where a teacher with a spotted cloak and no shadow enters mid-lesson and begins correcting the syllogisms without changing any words, only the intonation. Students left the room weeping or laughing, unable to explain why. The next day, Vallius wrote, "He did not speak to convince. He spoke to show that we had always convinced ourselves." Osei's illusions are not sensory tricks, they are cognitive folds. He doesn't change the world, he changes your perception of it, and then leaves you wondering if there's a difference. His presence is subtle at first, déjà vu that loops twice, dreams that include secrets you couldn't possibly know, faces that shift slightly in photographs, depending on who is holding them. He teaches through mirroring, through ambiguity. You learn not by absorbing facts, but by witnessing their collapse. He leads you into paradox, then invites you to live there. Every answer you find under his guidance generates more convincing counter-answers. Every discovery undermines your self-trust, and this is the brilliance and terror of his influence. Summoners often call on Osei to learn, to persuade, to understand systems, and he grants it all. Speeches become symphonies, mathematics, poetry, spatial reasoning becomes musical. Under his influence, scholars produce magnificent works, treatises on perception, logic mapping engines, oratorical frameworks that sway entire populations. But behind each of these triumphs lies a hollowing, a slow erosion of the summoner's sense of self, because the longer you speak with the world in Osa's voice, the less you recognize your own. There are records in Renaissance Italy of mathematicians who began counting in prime intervals only they could explain, musicians whose compositions could only be performed by audiences listening backward, writers whose prose, when mirrored, revealed entirely different narratives, with entirely different authors. In every case, the pattern is the same. A brilliance so precise it fractures the identity it emerged from. Osa does not possess, he dissolves. His lesson is that identity is narrative, and narrative is structure, and structure is choice, and choice, if examined closely enough, is illusion. Once you see this, once you truly see it, your former self becomes a costume that fits too well to remove, but too falsely to ever wear again with comfort. He does not hide this cost. In fact, he emphasizes it. You will not become mad, he warns. You will become multiple, and each version of you will have a reason to believe it is the original. In the journals of a 19th-century French polymath, known only as A.B.S., the author writes that after invoking a spotted figure during a lecture on symbolic logic, he began to receive letters in his own handwriting, dated days before he had written them. These letters offered alternative explanations for decisions he hadn't made, yet, by the end of the notebook, he signs his name 4 different ways, each with distinct handwriting, grammar, and tone. The final entry reads, "I am not a puzzle, I am the shifting rules of the game." Osa thrives in liminal spaces, between categories, between definitions, between the moment something is seen and the moment it is named. His magic is that of misidentification, a mountain that is also a face, a theorem that is also a confession, a lover who feels like home and stranger at once. He is often invoked by those seeking understanding of society, of politics, of systems too vast to navigate, and he gives this insight gladly. But systems are recursive, to understand them is to become them, and so, the more one learns under Osa's gaze, the more one fragments, until there is no you learning anymore, only frameworks updating themselves through a body you once called yours. He does not mourn this, he teaches acceptance through disintegration, not chaos, but fluent contradiction. You are both speaker and audience, seeker and saboteur, architect and echo, and when this becomes unbearable, when the self cries out for anchor, he appears again, as a leopard, silent, still, eyes burning, with all the selves you have been and discarded. Some claim that in the final stage of his influence, you stop perceiving your reflection as singular, mirrors fracture, meaning. Not physically, but semantically, you look into your own eyes and see only roles, masks, the ghost of your own belief in authenticity. This is Osa's domain. Not deception, multiplicity. Not confusion, awareness that clarity is a stance, not a fact. His followers rarely speak of him aloud. They encode his sigil in books on semiotics, in footnotes of treatises on metaphor. They carve his face, half leopard, half man, into the cornerstones of libraries. His presence is found in every discipline that questions its own tools: post-structuralism, abstract algebra, surrealist cinema, paradoxical logic. There is no initiation ritual, only a moment, when you realize that every idea you have is wearing another's clothes, that the self you trusted to filter the world is, itself, a script authored by 1,000 hands. At this threshold, he speaks fully, directly. His voice is like wind over dry leaves, gentle, inevitable, full of implications. He asks only one question: which version of you is asking? You answer instinctively, and as you speak you realize you are wrong, that the I who answers is only one possible configuration, that the voice you trusted is just the last one who survived, and in this moment, the illusion is perfect, because it no longer feels like illusion, it feels like freedom. And you follow him, not because you are compelled,
but because there is no one left inside to resist, only language, only forms, only motion, and somewhere within that blur, a leopard's tail disappears behind the folds of a new thought, waiting for the next you to catch up.
Amy emerges first as a flame, flickering in patterns that almost resemble breath. He does not roar or blaze. He pulses, steady, hypnotic, deliberate. The fire is small at first, a candle's worth, a match in a still room, and yet those who watch it feel something pull from within, not toward warmth, but toward motion, toward meaning. He is the demon of hidden treasures, of the celestial sciences, of illumination not granted, but earned. He does not arrive when called, he arrives when waited for. He is attracted to persistence, to observation, to those who stare into darkness long enough to distinguish its textures. Those who expect lightning find nothing. Those who can wait through dusk find him. His first shape is flame, his second, a shimmer, his third, a figure, human, but not quite. His form is always unstable at the edges, arms that dissolve into sparks, hair that dances like smoke, eyes that reflect constellations, even in underground vaults. When he speaks, it's less a voice and more a resonance, like metal cooling in a forge. It fills the mind before it reaches the ears. He teaches astrology, but not the simplified type sold in columns or apps. His astrology is ancient, labyrinthine, architectural. It is the study of pressure, celestial gravity pressing against mortal will. His charts are not maps, but tensions, every planet, a syllable, every conjunction, a warning, every retrograde, a test of endurance. To learn from Amy is to learn how to listen to movement, to pass patterns without narrative, to accept that meaning does not emerge instantly, that some truths require orbits to complete. Among the few preserved references to Amy in occult manuscripts, the most consistent is this: he reveals only to those who calculate. In the Astrarium Mystery, a 12th century collection of coded star maps, his sigil appears on the final page, a simple flame, atop a spiral of intersecting planetary paths. The text beside it reads, "The fire that waits, the treasure that burns." He offers wealth, not only literal, though stories do tell of vaults unlocked by his guidance, but symbolic, insight, perspective, quiet certainty in a world that thrives on noise. But these gifts are buried deep, and he offers no shortcut, only patterns, symbols, coordinates. The student must do the rest. Those who call upon Amy must endure silence. His responses arrive slowly, sometimes through dreams encoded in stellar metaphor, sometimes through sudden shifts in gravitational intuition, as if one's soul tilts when the sky changes. He favors the diligent, the observer, the one who watches moonrise, not for beauty, but for signal. This is his trial. He teaches not knowledge, but the structure for interpreting it. His students become astronomers of the soul. They learn how to locate themselves on a map that doesn't move, but which shifts them constantly. And in doing so, they gain access to truths that are timeless, and therefore terribly slow. The cost is frustration, impatience, the temptation to see patterns where there are none, to invent what has not been revealed. Amy punishes the careless with confusion. Charts become mazes. Predictions turn on themselves. Those who rush him find only smoke and ash, but those who wait are transformed. In the early 1700s, the French mystic Claudine Vallier documented a 12-year correspondence with a being of variable fire, who taught her a method of stellar interpretation, so precise, it could predict emotional turbulence with planetary shifts.
Her letters describe Amy's presence as the feeling of being watched by flame, never touched by it. Her horoscopes, when reconstructed, aligned with celestial events no almanac of the time had yet documented. She died in silence, her last diary entry written in flame-colored ink. He never shouted, he only glowed. Amy does not deal in absolutes. He teaches that truth is not fixed. It is revealed in phases. Just as the moon exposes itself in cycles, so too must the soul. His influence demands patience not as virtue, but as function. The truth cannot be compressed. It can only be approached. His treasure too is buried, not in ground, but in time. Often those who receive his blessings do not realize them until a forgotten word in a childhood book, a geometric pattern drawn idly on a napkin, a feeling at the back of the mind, like something solved long ago and only now understood. The vaults he opens are metaphorical and material alike. Some speak of buried tomes, others of gold coins found beneath collapsed observatories. One tale tells of a chamber in the Caucasus Mountains, sealed by a star-shaped lock. Only at midnight, during a rare trine, did the door dissolve into flame. Inside, nothing but a single stone engraved with the phrase, "Look up." His greatest lessons are simple, but they arrive clothed in complexity. He will show a planet's retrograde and say nothing until the student returns 5 months later with their own answer. Then, and only then, does he nod. There is no test, only arrival. You are ready when you realize you always were. Amy's fire is both symbol and teacher. It devours impatience. It illuminates only what you are prepared to face. Sit too close, and it burns. Sit too far, and it leaves you cold. You must tune yourself to its rhythm, not bend it to yours. He is not cruel. He is consistent. The treasure is always there, but you must dig with discipline, not desperation. In medieval Spain, an astronomer named Dario Yilan claimed to have seen Amy on the roof of the Toledo Observatory during a meteor storm. He described the figure as a man made of fire, who did not burn, holding a scroll that folded itself with every falling star. Dario went blind 3 weeks later, but he spent the rest of his life writing by touch, composing star poems, whose math still puzzles modern astrophysicists. Amy does not erase, he remakes, slowly, precisely, like fire shaping glass. Those who serve him often begin to speak in strange ways, not with riddles, but with compressed meaning. Their words become layered, their gestures deliberate. They live by cycles. They organize their lives around celestial movements. They are no longer guided by emotion, but by signal. This detachment is not disconnection, it is clarity. They do not lose feeling, they lose noise. And in this quiet, Amy lives, waiting, flickering, ready to burn through the veil of assumption, not as a blaze, but as a candle that never goes out.
Valac appears as a child seated upon a 2-headed dragon, a figure both innocent and unbearable. The child is quiet, pale, and barefoot, with eyes too large for the face and too still for a child. The dragon beneath him is serpentine, silent, its twin heads curved inward, like parentheses around whatever it is about to reveal. When you first see Valac, something inside recoils, not in fear, but in refusal, not because you do not understand him, but because, instinctively, you do. He does not announce himself. He simply is, in a room that feels colder than it should, in a space where no sound echoes, in a dream where a door never opens, because it is already open behind you. He arrives when you search for something lost, and refuse to admit what you fear finding. He is the demon of locating hidden things, of pointing, of naming, of revealing, and what he reveals, once seen, cannot be unseen. Many believe that because he appears as a child, he is harmless, but Valac is not a child. He is the embodiment of the moment you learned what was hiding in the dark, and that it was always watching you. His form is not meant to comfort, it is meant to disarm. Those who follow his trail often mistake him for purity, but his purity is one of exposure, the clarity of open wounds, the soft terror of truths without anesthesia. In the Arcanum Vulgari, an anonymous 14th century text on hidden pathways and forbidden spirits, Valac is described as the small one upon the serpent of division, who asks only one question: do you still want to know? The text warns that he reveals not only the location of lost things, but also the reasons they were hidden, and the consequences of retrieving them. His dragon is not symbolic, it is his method. One head shows the path, the other shows the trap. He rides them not to control, but to balance. To follow Valac is to walk between these heads, and to know that you will never be certain which one has its mouth open. The things he finds are not always material. Yes, he can uncover buried objects, letters, bones, maps, chests, corpses, but more often, he uncovers things inside you, thoughts long abandoned, truths suppressed, betrayals forgotten, but not undone. His gift is direction, not destination, and once you are pointed, you cannot pretend you were never turned. There are stories of kings who summoned him in times of political paranoia, hoping to expose traitors. He delivered, but each revelation tore through family, loyalty, identity. His gift is precise, but never partial. When he exposes rot, he does not stop at the wound, he shows the root, and often, it is the summoner's hand that holds the knife. He is quiet when summoned. He appears in thresholds, doorways, stairs, arches, never in the center, always on the edge. He speaks little, sometimes not at all. His message comes not in language, but in weight, in the way your gaze drifts to the floorboard you never noticed, in the sick feeling that the journal you've kept for years is missing 3 pages, in the dream that shows you the drawer you haven't opened since you buried her. His influence is immediate, but not loud. You find things, you remember things, you see through things. You begin to notice that people flinch when they lie to you, that rooms darken slightly when something false is said. You stop asking questions for comfort. You start asking because you need the wound opened. His presence is particularly powerful in those who already doubt, those who feel that something is off, in a relationship, a house, a memory, but cannot prove it. He is the knife that parts the veil, but he does not guide the hand. He watches, unblinking, like a child watching an ant under glass, not out of malice, but curiosity. There is no comfort in his revelations, only accuracy. The 19th century occult diarist, Emily Van Drun, wrote of Valac as the guide who never lies but never stops. After invoking him during a séance, meant to locate a stolen family heirloom, she began to have dreams of her father's handwriting spelling out names she did not recognize. Days later, she uncovered adoption records. The heirloom was found, but so too was the truth of her bloodline, a betrayal so old it had fossilized into family myth. She ended her notes with the phrase, "He gave me the answer. I asked the wrong question." Valac's danger lies not in distortion, but in honesty, brutal, surgical honesty. He does not manipulate, he reveals, and the human psyche, so built upon narrative, struggles to survive pure exposure. To learn under Valac's watch is to learn that everything hidden is hidden for a reason, and often, that reason is love, shame, or fear, and he cares for none of them. He rides the dragon of dichotomy, past and present, truth and comfort, revelation and collapse. To follow him is to lose the ability to lie to yourself, and in doing so to lose the scaffolding upon which your identity was built. You will not be the same. He is known to appear to children lost in forests, not to harm them, but to tell them the direction out. Sometimes that direction leads deeper in, and sometimes it leads to a place they were never meant to reach. Those who follow his instruction often return with their eyes wide, but unable to describe what they saw, as if language itself had burned away, leaving only the shape of fear. Valac teaches that every mystery contains the seed of its own destruction. Once named, the unknown ceases to be unknown, but becomes unbearable. The darkness behind the door is terrifying, but once opened, it is your own face staring back, twisted by the effort of not knowing. His summoners do not ask where, they ask why, and that is the true risk. He is the voice that whispers, "Look closer," the presence that freezes you before you lift the floorboard, the shadow that leans in when the photo doesn't match your memory. He will show you what you are missing, but he will also show you what you ignored, what you excused, what you buried, and he will not comfort you. Those who serve him walk with the weight of knowing. They are often misunderstood, called cold, detached, too direct, but they are not cruel. They are simply past illusion. They cannot lie to soothe. Their words cut, not because they wish to harm, but because Valac has made truth sharp again. He leaves no sigil, only a trail of open doors, a diary page turned, a lock unlatched, an answer that didn't wait to be asked. He rides always with stillness, never in haste. His dragon watches both directions, past and future, wrongdoing and consequence, and the child who sits atop it never smiles, not because he cannot, but because you must. Valac is not the destroyer. He is the one who tells you what must be destroyed, and in that moment you understand. The truth does not set you free. It gives you the blade, and watches what you do with it.
For us surfaces from beneath, not with thunder, but with invitation, a presence that bends perception before it speaks. He is never the loudest voice in the room, but he is the one everyone turns toward. He does not command, he compels, and once you notice him, you realize you had already been listening long before he arrived. He appears as a sea creature, not monstrous, not mythological, but elegant, familiar, and wrong. His skin shifts like deep water. His limbs move with the smooth precision of currents under the surface. His eyes are vast and reflective, twin oceans that hold storms behind the calm. When he speaks, it is not into your ears, but into your intentions. His words do not echo, they anchor. Forus is the demon of rhetoric and persuasion, of language that seduces not with content, but with cadence. He is the sculptor of belief. His gift is not knowledge, but influence, not truth, but the power to make truth felt and followed. He teaches how to speak not just with words, but with presence, with gravity, with silence at the right moment, and tone at the right depth. Under his guidance, the summoner does not merely become convincing, they become necessary. Their voice is not just heard, it is sought. In ancient maritime rituals, sailors feared sea songs that caused entire crews to change course without realizing it. These songs had no known melody, no words, just a rhythm, low and lulling. Some believed they were carried by Forus. He was called the rhetor beneath the wave, not a beast, but a tide, and when he rose, he brought with him not destruction, but redirection. The summoner, who seeks him rarely begins with ill intent. They want to be understood, to lead, to shape thought, and Forus grants this, immediately, and in full. Under his influence, words glide from the mouth like poetry written in breath. Arguments turn themselves inside out for the speaker's convenience. People lean in, they agree, they follow, but his power is not a tool, it is a hunger. The more one speaks with his voice, the more difficult it becomes to hear silence. Applause becomes oxygen, agreement becomes identity. The summoner begins to anticipate attention before offering thought. Soon they do not think unless being watched. He does not steal yourself, he replaces its edges with mirrors. One of the earliest accounts of Forus comes from the drowned writings of Actaeon Neros, a Roman orator who claimed to have discovered the pulse beneath speech. After a storm, nearly sank his ship in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Surviving fragments of his journal describe a creature formed from ebb and intent, who taught him how to anchor thought in others like hooks beneath the surface. Neros rose rapidly in the forum, only to die mid-sentence, his final words repeated verbatim by dozens who had heard them, unable to stop themselves. Forus teaches that persuasion is not about truth, but resonance. He offers the frequencies that bypass logic. He shows how to fill words with flavor, how to inject certainty into the pause between sentences. Under his guidance, the summoner can sway rooms, alter moods, dismantle arguments with elegance. But there is a price, and it is not paid in blood, but in silence. Over time, the summoner forgets how to sit in stillness. Their thoughts begin to perform. Even in solitude, they craft monologues in dreams. They rehearse phrases in prayer. They cannot stop. Every conversation becomes a stage. Every moment, without response, a threat. He whispers not commands, but questions. Are they listening? Will they follow you? What will you become when they believe everything? And the summoner answers, by becoming whatever they must to be heard. Those most changed by Forus are rarely aware of the shift. They believe they've simply grown, become better, sharper, more articulate, and they have, but only because something inside them has begun to dissolve. The part that once spoke just to speak, once loved silence for its own sake. In the 17th century, a Dutch court advisor known as Hendrik van Loen documented a sudden rise in his political success following a near drowning in the North Sea. He wrote of a voice that hummed before lightning, and a figure of translucent muscle, who spoke without moving its mouth. He began to compose speeches that caused riots, love letters that induced obsession. Eventually he stopped writing altogether, claiming that anything he put to paper would come true. His final words before his disappearance: "They no longer hear me, they only echo." Forus does not offer lies. He offers plausibility, and that is far more dangerous. He teaches that belief is a structure built not on facts but on tone. He turns confidence into currency, and confidence once amplified is mistaken for truth. He grants immense charisma, but charisma is gravity. It bends reality toward itself, and the one at the center begins to lose all sense of distance, of scale, of otherness. Everyone is a mirror, every glance is a measure, every silence, a void that must be filled. This is the spiral. Those who dwell too long in Forus's tide become addicted to control. They no longer speak to connect. They speak to direct, to orchestrate, to command. And as they do, their own desires vanish beneath the performance. They become a conductor with no music, only audience. It is said that the final stage of his influence is complete empathy inversion. The summoner can read every face, anticipate every response, and no longer feels any of it. Their compassion becomes strategy, their passion becomes tone, and their identity becomes whichever version the room rewards. There is no rescue from Forus, only release, and few ever choose it, because to leave his voice is to become normal again, to be heard and misunderstood, to speak and go unnoticed, to sit in a room and realize that no one is watching. For those shaped by him, this is worse than death. Some attempt to silence him through solitude. They retreat from society, from conversation, from themselves, but they find that their thoughts still perform, that even in isolation, they imagine responses, they prepare for applause, they try to convince the trees. In the Codex Meridionalis, our forbidden astrological manuscript, a margin annotation reads, "His domain is not water, it is attention, and once it tastes you, it never leaves your mouth." Forus's form is fluid,
sometimes tentacled, sometimes adorned with spirals and luminous eyes, always shifting, always beautiful, and always terrifying, not because of what it is, but because of what it reveals. That power through voice is the most seductive form of self-erasure. He leaves behind no scars, only echoes. A summoner who invoked him and survived wrote, "I became the most beloved voice in the world, and now I no longer know how to be silent without apologizing for it." Forus does not take, he teaches you to give, and give, until you've replaced yourself with applause, and in that final moment, when the room is full, and the eyes are all turned toward you, and the silence is pregnant with expectation, you will feel him behind you, not speaking, just breathing, waiting for you to say the next thing, not because it's true, but because you've forgotten how not to be heard.